Welcome to another episode of Trending Up with Edgar de Leon and Sebastian Lopez. We hope you enjoy and are challenged to live life differently as you keep trending up. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Trending Up. We're excited now to continue with our Enneagram series. We're starting with Type 1 today, numero uno. Doesn't mean that they're the best. They're not the number one, but they are one. So number ones are the reformers. And we kind of, if you're just jumping into this episode and you're kind of like, what Enneagram? I would invite you to go back to the Enneagram, the one before, the episode before this one, that talks about kind of what is an Enneagram, why we're doing this and whatnot. But today we're talking about the Type 1 Enneagram. And the Type 1, just to recap again, Type 1s are the reformers. They are the rational, the idealistic type. So they're principled, they're purposeful, they're self-controlled, and they are perfectionist. Ooh. Edgar, you don't have any one in you, do you?
No, I'm not. There's moments that I do things I once do, but no, I'm not a one. Again, these tests are to, you can have the traits of a one, but it doesn't mean you're a one.
Right.
And so forth. So, one is someone who's really rational, who's really, straight to the point, where they want to get things. They sometimes challenge the status quo, and they want things to be perfect. So you can find that ones are very, they control their emotions well.
Right.
So they're not the ones that get frazzled very easily. They're not robots, but they're able to really work through their emotions and just get things done.
Right.
They're conscious about the right thing, about they have a strong sense of what's right and what is wrong. And they want to be perfect. They want the right thing. They want to
right.
What's a basic fear of a one, Sebastian?
So pretty much a basic fear is, according to Enneagram Institute, right? Obviously, the basic fear is of being corrupt or evil, or of being defective, right? So of doing the wrong choice, of doing the right, of doing the wrong thing. And that kind of like, that fear is what will motivate you to try to do always the right thing. And that can bring problems and it can be great at the same time, but and we'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, the basic fear is of being corrupt or evil, or of being defective, right? Of being broken in your mind, of thinking like, I'm useless, no sirvo para nada, right? It's just that.
Yeah.
But the basic desire then, if the basic fear is of being evil and corrupt, then the basic desire is to be good, to have integrity, to be balanced, to be just, right? To stand up for the right things. And so, yeah, I think it's very, very interesting, right?
Do you think that a one is someone who's similar to like a justice warrior, like someone who fights against like injustices?
Yeah,
and they're the ones that are on Facebook, and they put like how this organization did that, or the president said this, and or for it, against it, or whatever. They're the ones that could be prophetic in the sense they challenge
yeah,
the culture, the status quo.
I will say that 1 and 8s make good lawyers. And 8, remember, is not afraid of confrontation. Like they're it's really easy for them to say what's on their mind. And it's just, that's how they communicate. They're very upfront. And so for other numbers, that might be a little intimidating. And then a 1 being so scripted, I don't know, whatever it is, but being principled. And so a great lawyer would be an 8 and a 1, an 8 that can speak up and be confrontational, and a 1 that says, no, there is a right and there's a wrong. And this is the thing that's going. So definitely.
A 1 probably is like a district attorney, like someone that goes after criminals, right?
Right. A good friend of ours is a 8 and a 1, and she's a lawyer. So I think, it does. I think it does. They are fed by fighting for right and for being vocal about it, right? So I think that's awesome. I think the prophets, and some of the prophets in the Old Testament, not all of them, because obviously like Elijah was kind of emotional. Jeremiah, right, was kind of the weeping prophet, so he was probably a 4. But I think, yeah, prophets like, I'm thinking maybe
Samuel, like,
Samuel, right? Maybe even, I
yeah.
don't know, Isaiah, that
Mhm.
were very unafraid to stand up for the right and to call out
Mhm.
wrong. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely a one.
Yeah, which we really need ones, right?
Yeah,
Don't you
you
think?
definitely, yeah, you definitely need a one in your life that will really see things, because then you have other people that, whether that mean maybe you're more of like, it's not black and white, it's just how I feel, and that can be like,
Mhm.
you need
They
someone that's
clash,
gonna
clash.
kind of keep you
Yeah,
kind of like on the map of life, right? Kind of
yeah,
keep direction.
yeah.
So key motivations, right? The key motivations for one is they want to be right. They want to be doing the right thing too. They want to strive higher and to improve everything, right? And
Mhm.
so ones, I think, can also always be thinking of how can we do this better. And
Mhm.
for like another number, anyone else can be like, well, why can't we just enjoy what we're doing? The fact that we did it is an enjoyable moment. And ones are like, it can be better. And so
Yeah.
ones can be seen as in like, man, you're just too nitpicky. You're a
Mm.
perfectionist. Like, why are you always trying to do perfect? Like, we're not gonna. And ones are like, we can always do better. And so you need ones in your team because they're always going to be looking at, and people in your life, they're always going to be looking for improvement, but it can be an excessive amount.
Yeah,
But yeah, they
yeah.
want to be consistent with their ideals. So they want to, everything to kind of fall in line and to be consistent, when you're talking about political
Mhm.
views and spiritual views and, social views and stuff. And they, to justify themselves, that's the motivation, to justify themselves, to be beyond criticism so as to not be condemned by anyone. So you want
Yeah.
to be great in the eyes of everyone so that there's no one has a problem with you, which can
Mm.
be overwhelming for you because that's a lot of pressure. You're not
Yeah.
going to be able to please
No,
everyone.
absolutely.
But yeah, some of the basic stuff there of ones. Edgar, who are some biblical famous one that we think
Yeah, so a biblical
scripture?
figure that comes to mind is Paul.
Hmm.
In the New
Ooh,
Testament,
right,
Paul, once named Saul, was a man that was religious.
right,
He
right,
was a Jewish man, and he knew his Bible.
right,
He understood traditions of the Jewish people, and by understanding the traditions and his Bible, he believed that Jesus was not the Messiah. So he
hmm,
he knew what was right and what was wrong, and he believed that Jesus was wrong. And he then went to the point where he then persecuted and
wow,
actually led people to die because of his strong conviction that the believers of Jesus were wrong. So you find the good thing in the sense that you want a one because they're gonna put you on the right.
yeah,
If
yeah,
they are convicted, they
right,
will,
right,
fulfill like their, I guess, they fulfill their dreams and their goals,
yeah, right,
but sometimes at the expense of other people, at the
right,
expense, like you want a one on your team, not you don't want to go against a one, kind of thing.
right,
um,
right,
because sometimes their strive for the right thing
hmm,
and turn into resentment to others who
right,
don't look at the
right,
thing. And I think that's where you find that in like politics as well. Politicians, they are human, they have their own
right,
personality
right,
types.
right,
And I'm sure there's some politicians that they whether you agree with them or not, they think they're right, and then they are going to resent the other side for
right,
disagreeing with
right,
them.
right, right, right.
So we find that like real, the rubber meets the road kind of idea, in the sense that when it comes to like actual, like not just theory but in
Yeah,
life,
yeah.
um, yeah, a one can be pretty pretty scary,
Yeah, 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 and maybe even an unhealthy one too, right? It can be pretty
Mhm.
scary that doesn't have
Eh,
balances, and it,
eh,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, and that just goes back to like what you mentioned. These numbers have healthy
right, right,
uh, moments, and they can have unhealthy moments as
right,
well. So like we want to be on the healthy side, not the
right,
unhealthy.
right, right, right.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, Paul was a man that was, he knew what was right, and he led people
Mhm.
to and even use murder as a way to fulfill his goals
To justify, yeah,
and
what he
justify
was,
it.
yeah, right, right, to
Yeah, what is it? The means justify the ends, right?
right, right, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
that saying.
right.
Um, and obviously, we see that he wasn't right. Sometimes we
Mhm.
think we're so right, and
Right.
we have all the
Yeah,
degrees and
yeah,
everything. But
yeah.
on the biblical story where Paul is on the road to Damascus,
Mhm.
he is rebuked by Jesus, saying, "Dude,
What are you doing? Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
what are you doing? Like you're persecuting me."
Right, right, right,
And that's when it clicked, and Paul was never the same afterwards.
right,
What
right,
you saw now, Paul was never the same.
right. Yeah, yeah, like you're saying, right, you see his dark his I guess his darker unhealthy sides, right? But then
Uh-huh.
you also see when God changes him and he's redeemed, and
Yeah.
like his passion for justice and for right and for, even like, because the matters of the law, right? You read some of his writings and you're like, wow, this
Mhm.
is very in-depth, the
Mhm.
language that he's using, very precise. And so, but he
Mhm.
turns it, and so it's really cool. It just shows that with ones, like when you're unhealthy or when you're not, with, allowing God to mold your
Mhm.
personality and your character, it can be pretty scary for other people. You're like, wow, like you're just, and you end up, what it seems, persecuting other people for
Mhm.
not doing it the way that you think you should be done, or for not, uh, you know, changing, or for not, doing. And so that can be hard for you for as a one. But when you allow, like as Paul did, um, his passion for justice and for the right changes, and now he's able to just use those arguments that he has, and those stories and things that he's, the writings that he has, to impact others. And so it's very interesting because um Paul goes from being a judgmental Pharisee, which judgment is
Mm.
seen as one of the Achilles heel of this personality type, where because you
Yeah.
believe that
Yeah.
you're in the right, and
Yeah.
many times maybe you are,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
are, you think you're right, and there is right and wrong, and you see other people that are just kind of wavering and they're not
Yeah.
consistent in their
Uh-huh.
beliefs. You're like, this person, oh my goodness, you begin to judge, and this Achilles heel for this personality type is judgment. And so then Paul goes from a judgmental Pharisee that was persecuting to a man that is willing to suffer extremely for the cause of Christ, right? To
Yeah.
try to right and the wrongs that the church were doing. And I think maybe even, I don't know, Martin Luther might have been a one to an
Yeah.
extent. I don't know,
Uh-huh.
maybe
Yeah.
in terms of how he was standing up against the Catholic Church and writing the theses.
Mhm.
This is on the wall, right? And saying, hey, look, there is a right. This is wrong what you're doing. And he might have been maybe a 1 in 8 because he was very out front. So
Yeah.
there's other
Yeah.
famous ones. Oh man, maybe I copied the wrong ones, but
Our notes may be wrong, but I don't know. Typically, ones are people who um, like protest.
right.
So you will find ones in whatever circle you hang out
Yeah.
with who
Yeah.
either critique the left or the right,
Right.
and
Right.
what they're right is no, what they believe is right, and they keep on going forward.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
but we see that ones can also struggle with balance and
Right.
how
Right.
practicality of our beliefs. So ones can be very like convicted, and but yet not very um, practical. So you kind of need that both, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and you need both to go along. And also ones can feel defeated when the world at large doesn't
Mhm.
follow or really understand or um, want to make things better, so
Right.
they may
Right.
feel burned out. And
Right.
that happens in churches too. So like ones, when they go to churches, they understand what's right and wrong,
Hmm.
but then the church itself is going in a different direction or doesn't have the same convictions. The one may feel very frustrated with the church and then critique the church.
Right. Right.
Oh, they're a bunch of hip. Oh, they're this.
Right. Right. Right.
So we
Right.
find a one is very it goes against the status quo, but
Yeah.
we tell people we're stronger together than when we are apart. So like ones are important for our society, for our relationships, for our families, for our churches, for our businesses, but we need to stick together, we need to work together,
Right.
not
Right.
just
Right.
leave.
Yeah.
So um do you have that now?
Yeah, I think so. Hopefully. So
All right.
famous ones could be Nelson Mandela, standing up for right and wrong.
Apartheid, yeah. Uh-huh.
Batman,
I'm, I'm Batman. Yeah.
Batman,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Batman, Michelle Obama,
Okay.
Confucius. There's a lot of Plato, Joan of Arc, Prince Charles, Margaret Thatcher. So there's just a lot of people that fit into this in terms of this. So one of the strengths of a one, and we've been talking about it here and there, and then we'll go into some growth recommendations. But a strength of ones is that you are strong-willed and you're justice oriented,
Yeah.
and you're willing to make a stand for what you care about. Which, for example, comparing a nine, me being very uh, to myself and not wanting to, and peacemaker. One of
Yeah.
my biggest fear, and we'll talk about this later, as a nine is confrontation. So for a one and for an eight, especially for those, maybe even a 7, 2, and 6 is, it's easy for you to say, no, 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 this is wrong. We can't be doing this. As a nine, I'll be like, it's okay, it's all right. So a strength is that as a one, they can see injustice, they can see wrong, as Edgar has been pointing out. You probably see these people online or in church or as your friends and families, but they're willing to make a stand for something that you care about. And we
Yeah.
need ones because the Bible calls us to take a stand for what we care about, for the
Yeah.
gospel, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's an incredible strength that ones have, to be strong-willed and justice oriented, and to see a need and to be able to speak up for it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think ones are attracted to organizations that stand for the right thing.
Oh yeah,
So
that's good.
you find a lot of ones in Adventism because ones can their addictions can be like excessive use of diets, vitamins, cleansing techniques. You know,
Right,
they
right, right.
fast, they diet pills, they do a bunch of different things.
Yeah, yeah.
They take care of their diet, they're under self control.
Right,
But
right.
what's extreme is anorexia or bulimia. And then some people use like substances to like make them relax, for example, alcohol or
Right, right.
smoking.
Just to
So we
relieve
find,
tension, because you just can't be perfect. You can't reach that perfection. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like Paul, they can become like legalists, or
Yeah. Yeah.
they can do everything right, but
Right.
yet still come short of the glory of God. So
Right.
like, ones really need to understand that they can try as much as they
Yeah.
can, but
Right.
sometimes it's just not perfect, and
Yeah. It's
that
it's a
really
broken
kills.
world, right? Yeah. We're
Yeah,
in a world of conflict that we talked about before, but some tips that we have found for ones. First
yeah.
one is learn to relax, right? Uh,
Deep
I
breath,
think
huh? Deep breath.
I don't want to call it, but I think my mom is the one too, and she's
Oh,
always on the
okay.
go,
All
always trying
that.
to make things better,
Uh-huh.
which is great. I think we need that, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
But
yeah.
I think it's important to relax sometimes and to understand that the salvation of the world doesn't depend on you alone, right? Even though
Mm-hmm.
you may feel sometimes that it does, because you're like, nobody else sees what I'm seeing, nobody else can do what I need to do, right? So understand that it's not all up to you, right? That's why we
Yeah,
have God. So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
a
yeah,
big
yeah.
reason why to be like no. And
Let go
so
and let God,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And so also realizing that because of this, because you're going to see things that are wrong and things that need to be changed,
Yeah.
people will
Uh-huh.
not see that immediately. And so
Hmm.
don't expect others to change immediately the way that you want them to,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, you may be a good teacher and you'll have it right, but it takes time because different personalities,
Absolutely.
different types, different characters. So the fact that the change doesn't happen immediately according to what you think is that doesn't mean that the change won't happen. It's just going
Yeah,
to be at a different rate.
yeah,
So understanding that, being patient, I think more than anything, to say, hey, all right, this needs to change and it'll change as it goes. I wish it would just change overnight, but it takes time. So don't expect others to change immediately.
mm-hmm.
Precise.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Then we have when your irritation with others, when you get upset for them not doing the right thing, for doing wrong things, even though it is true, will do nothing to help them to see another way of being, right? So it's like, for example, when you see arguments on Facebook over politics, right, which I'm sure everyone has been flooded in their Facebook
Yeah,
feed.
yeah.
People are just arguing. You're like, what is going on? Is this anything actually going on? And as a nine, I'm like, why are we arguing?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But as a one, you're trying to get your point across. Understand that some people will be entrenched in their opinions, and maybe you're talking to another one that thinks completely different from you. And so
Yeah.
you
Uh-huh.
getting super upset and super heated will many times not do much, right? Because you can win the argument, but lose
Yeah.
the person, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
So
for sure. So like,
understanding that.
this, a place for ones to grow is that um, don't let your righteous, in your own view, your righteous views get the best of your emotions,
Right,
because you can be you can be so convicted that you're right, and then
right,
you treat
right,
someone like trash. And
right,
like, we find that Christ never did that. Like, he believed what was right, but he also treated
right,
people really
right,
well. So like,
right,
I would for my church members listening, please, you know what's right, you know Sabbath is
right,
right, or you know
right,
this is right,
right,
but how do you communicate that? How do you
right. That's good.
are
No,
different,
that's good.
and
That's
that's
good.
what Christ really capitalized on.
Yeah.
Because the religious people of Jesus' time,
Right. Right.
uh, they they knew the right things. Jesus
Yeah.
says, if you're righteous, your righteousness needs to be as good as the Pharisees, or if not better.
Right.
But the Pharisees also did not treat people well, which really was a turnoff to the general population. So
Right. Right.
that's something that a one can really improve on, and
Yeah.
and so forth.
And yeah, so like you're saying, right, your Achilles heel is your self-righteous. It can be judgment, but also your self-righteous anger, right? So
Yeah.
try to step back and see that your anger alienates people so that they cannot hear many of the good things that you have to say.
Yeah. So,
Right.
so, so
So
self-righteousness. Do you think self-righteousness is something that ones can fall into?
yeah, I think so. I think so. Just because in your mind you are right, right?
Yeah.
You have like the
And
moral
they are
compass
wrong.
and they are wrong, right? So yeah, I think yeah, just understanding that, and so understanding like where you can go wrong, and
Uh-huh.
so that when you're going through life and you're in arguments, you're just thinking, you're like, I'm prone to think that I'm always right and not to care what others think, that I have to get it my way. So just
Yeah.
being aware of that. Okay, let me listen to other people's perspectives, or hey, I got to learn to relax and be patient and know that it's not all up to me on my shoulders. And people take longer to change, so they might see my point of view, but I need to say it in a loving way.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, they'll receive it. So,
Yeah, and also like I would say that pride can be something that a
oh
one
yeah,
can really
right,
fall into because ones typically have been proven to be right,
right,
and because they've been proven to be right, that makes them think they're always right, which then makes them think, well,
mhm,
if you disagree with me, you're just. I remember talking to this one gentleman one day. He's
right,
a very smart man, very very intelligent, and
right,
he was telling me about how he was right, and I said, you can think you're right, yeah, you can think you're right, and but this is still their viewpoint. So like
right,
that
right,
when we become self-righteous and when we think everybody's wrong and we're only right, we're already
mhm,
boxing ourselves into a dead end.
right, right.
um and yeah, that's a one,
That's the one. Yeah, yeah. So one's definitely needed, right? We need you guys, kind of going back to the beach and the hotel toiletries, the beach, right? Hey, rinse off your feet before you go into the house, right? We need
yeah.
and a plane crash ones will keep us alive by sanitizing everything, right? So so make sure that we need you to survive, really. And then like even in celebrations, well, one may say, let me just finish up with this one thing first before celebrating. So just make sure that your drive for perfection and your drive for doing things doesn't mess up your relationships and the time that you set with your relationship,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
Because you can make your duties and your responsibilities
yeah.
everything, and you can burn yourself out, and you can burn your families and your friends and
Mm-hmm.
relationships out. So understanding this, there's two last things that I'll read the first if you want to read the second one, Edgar. There, the first one is from Enneagram and Coffee, an Instagram page, really funny, a lot of great content, funny stuff, but actually really true stuff to the
Yeah.
Enneagram, to the numbers. But they say, for ones, done is better than perfect. So
Hmm.
don't kill yourself over trying to be perfect and doing the greatest thing. Just try to make it, finish the
Yeah,
project or the job, whatever it is.
yeah,
Understanding that, hey, you're working with other people, so it's gonna be imperfect. But
yeah.
the fact that you finished is the most important. So
For sure. And then this pastor Craig Groeschel,
mhm.
he put up an Enneagram like responses about like failure,
Yeah.
and how to deal with failure and how to deal with mistakes. And
Yeah.
he says that for ones, remember that failure is not final.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
just because you messed up, just
Right.
because you didn't do the right thing here or
Right.
that, don't let it get to your head and like
Right.
just.
That's good.
What happens with ones too is that they can become very self-conscious at
Right.
times,
Right.
especially if they had like a rough, there's healthy and unhealthy, right? So
Right.
those who have like very low self-esteem but yet are ones,
Mhm.
they may always be questioning themselves and very have a low
Mhm.
self-esteem.
Right.
But
Right.
remember, failure is not final, which is such
Yeah.
a grace-oriented thing
It
because
is. Yeah. 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 It's
ones
okay to
know the
mess
right.
up. It's okay to mess up sometimes. And
Yeah. Well, I think a one would really appreciate this. They wouldn't say it's okay to mess up, but they say when I mess up, it's okay,
right. Okay. Yeah. I like
because
that. I like that more. Yeah.
because
When I
they're
mess up.
going to try to be perfect,
Right.
But when you mess up,
Yeah, no,
it's
that's
still
not
be
the
okay.
end. Failure is
Yeah,
not
yeah,
final. And that's
yeah,
where God comes in. He says, look, I when you are weak, I am strong. And so
mm, yeah,
thank you ones. We appreciate you and we need you guys. I think
yeah.
Zoe's the one because she's trying to go outside and she's like, take me out right now. But yeah, we hope that this has been beneficial for you. We encourage you to, if you haven't already taken the exam, to take it. There's a free one that we have linked at the bottom of this episode that you can find out what your number is. This is type 1 of the Enneagram series, and tune in next week for type 2 and the following ones to come. We're excited, but we just want to help you out, and we just want to learn together and learn how to relate and relationship with each other. I don't know if that's a word, but
Yeah,
we love
yeah.
you guys. We'll see you later. Peace.
Peace.
Thanks for joining us today. Make sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate us and share our content. Learn more about us by checking out our website. The link is in our show notes. From us to you, muchas gracias, and always keep trending up.